said that Brock Purdy and Brock Purdy's camp and the 49ers front office are in contract, talks. They both are motivated to get a deal done, but he did reference there being no guarantees that a deal gets done. And then small group interview, he kind of reiterated that and said, thankfully because of the NFL's CBA or whatever, which is just that Brock Purdy's under contract for this other year, he was saying, even if a deal doesn't get done, he's still going to be with our team.
Right.
And I felt like he hadn't really referenced that yet in the multiple times that he's been asked over the last, they've been talking about extending Brock Purdy for 2 years. And it's not until, just now that we've finally heard him. Obviously, us, literally the two of us and other content creators have talked about this. I mean, like, hey, he's still under contract for 1 more year. Let that play out. It seemingly has felt like the 49ers were never going to let that happen. They wanted to lock a deal up. And he was obviously saying that that is still the intention, but it was interesting for him. You're talking about the certain things that he's like recognizing. It was interesting to me that he recognized publicly to the media, say, if there's not a compromise that works for both of us, we can move on from Rock and we'll be fine. What do you
Yeah.
think about that?
Yeah. I think that he's introducing that just as leverage in the contract talks. I
Okay.
don't think it's something that they're
Part of the
necessarily going to commit to,
negotiation.
because again, ownership is calling the shots for this offseason. And I think that ownership wants Brock Purdy locked up because they want him as the face of the franchise to market. So I expect that a deal will get done, but at the same time, I think that they're going to be waiting for the market to calibrate first. And it helps that the Rams came to a deal with Stafford. That's a data point they can use in the contract talks to determine how much is fair market value for Brock right now. I think that part of that's going to be based on what the Rams give Stafford.
Yeah. Do you think that, and Julie asked in the comments, asked this earlier, do you think that Brock will take a team friendly deal? Or do you pay any credence to the rumors that, because it feels like maybe there's some good cop, bad cop. We've heard
Yeah.
reports from Diana Rossini that Brock Purdy is more than willing to take a team friendly deal. But then we've also heard that apparently Brock Purdy's agent is really trying to make a name for himself and he wants to make sure that Brock Purdy gets at least what Dak got, if not more. Obviously, we just saw Matthew Stafford got a contract extension, yesterday. So maybe they wanted some deals to start going through to ballpark where Brock was going to be. But is that some, we talked about John Lynch negotiating for the 49ers. Is the whole team friendly deal a little bit of negotiation to try to get fans on his side by Brock Purdy? Or do you think that Brock Purdy maybe
Partially.
will take a deal that's a lot smaller?
Yeah, I think that they're starting to negotiate through the media.
Yeah.
And,
Something that they
Brock's,
never do, right, Tom?
yeah, right. So, yeah, his agent came through the media, like a month ago, of saying that no, this has to be over 60, and people were parroting that. Lombardi had his estimation of what it would be, and it was like 61 something. I still hold to what I've said to you for over a year now. 5 years, 285 million. That's 57 a year. And the reason you go under 60 is because the pressure and the scrutiny is less. That if you hit 60, you get past a perceptual barrier where people are going to hold his feet to the fire if he doesn't deliver. If you're Mangin, his agent, I think you need to build some room under 60 to at least lighten that pressure some. It's one of those 999 mindsets of, markets will do that just because perceptually it seems a lot less than 10, 29. And I think that's what will happen with Brock, is that for his own sake, his agent should recognize that it shouldn't go over 60. And if the contract for Stafford comes in where he was asking, which is basically 2 years, 100 million is what he was asking the Raiders for. So if Stafford gets 50 or less, Brock can't really ask for 60 or more. And so I think that that's going to be where the eventual compromise point will be, is somewhere in the neighborhood of 53 to 57, 58, somewhere in there. But if the Niners want less of an outlay in the signing bonus because they're so consumed with how much cash they send out, then that could mean a bigger deal because it wouldn't have as much cash up front.
It's so interesting to think what the 49ers are doing. It's not the strategy that I thought that they were gonna take this offseason. So I feel like I've been
Me either.
a
It
little confused.
I'm taken back because it's so anti-competitive, and yet you look at this
Yeah.
team and you say
And you've
this
got
team
you
can still at least get in the playoffs, and then it's a question of who's hot, who's playing well, who's healthy. But it seems to me that, and this happened a few years ago, where Denise basically said, "We've spent a ton of money, and
yeah,
now we want to scale back." This is another one. They go through these cycles where they do that, where they review their spending and they say, "We need to cut back how much we're spending on the Niners this year," and they just categorically say, "Less now." And this is the exact same thing all over again. Part of that is, looking into selling the 10% of the stake of the team, or whatever chunk they're willing to give. I don't think that's about a cash crunch. I think it's about recovering their losses that they spent over budget for so many years as one of the most expensive rosters in the league. And they spent a ton of money on the new video board at Levi's so that they could get the Super Bowl and the World Cup. And so I think that the money that they're looking to generate from a sale of a percentage of the team is to cover that. It's not about generating new cash. It's about recalibrating to what they expected their expenditures to be. It's
yeah,
them paying themselves back for spending too much on the Niners roster over the last 5 years and spending on the video board at Levi's. It's
which
reimbursing themselves more than anything else.
yeah, which to me, I will say sucks. Like, I don't I don't think that there's any reason that the company that's making billions of dollars needs to be saving more cash. Like, I can see if Jed York was critical, like they gave big money to Javon Hargrave, and that to me was like not the a smart decision because he didn't turn out as
Yeah.
a player. But I'm not necessarily anti spending money. It's just like make sure the guys that you're going out are getting are going to perform and add to your roster, and you can go compete for a Super Bowl. But when it comes to like spending money and being all in, like Eddie DeBarlo was paying not only the best players to be on the field, but the second best players to sit on the bench. Like the whole reason the salary
Yeah.
cap exists is because they were spending so much money. So it's kind of
Well,
like,
it's different goals, though. Eddie
yeah,
was about, I don't care about the money. I care about the trophies. I
winning.
care about the rings only. And so, therefore, you get the comment from Parag of, they're the lemonade stand. Yeah. And that lemonade stand has 5 Lombardi trophies and you've got 0. Why? Because you're not willing to spend. Yeah. What is Eddie's summit? What's Eddie's mountaintop? Championships. What's Denise's mountaintop? Financial success. And that explains the last 30 years.
And that sucks when you're a 49ers fan.
As a Niner fan, yeah, because you get spoiled by Eddie D. I mean, it's my time. I've Niner fan since 1970. I go back to the Paleozoic era, so I remember when the Niners ownership was cheap, pre-Walsh, pre-DeBartolo. I remember all the things that they've gone through. Where, yeah, the Joe Thomas years, which were disastrous. You had coaches that make Tom Sula look like Vince Lombardi. Guys that
Yeah.
went 2-9, 2-10. Fred McCulley, or Pete McCulley, Fred whoever. Just disastrous hires. And so then Eddie DeBartolo comes along and he says, "Okay, I'm willing to spend any money possible to win a ring, and I'm going to hire Bill Walsh, and I'm going to go get all these players." And as a fan, you can't ask for anything more than that. That's your dream. And you have that for over a decade, and they win 5 rings, and they should have won more, really. It's just injuries to Steve Young, or the Anthony Carter game against Minnesota, Roger Craig's fumble against the Giants in the NFC Championship. There's a lot of things you can point to where, had those things gone differently, they've got 2-3 more rings. That's how incredible Eddie DeBartolo was. But now his sister takes over, and she's about financial championships. And that's why we're where we are. And that's why we're getting this recalibration, because they don't want to spend this level of money, and they don't want to give up a stake in the team. The NFL revenues are going through the roof. They want to keep what they've got, but they can't, because the cost of running an NFL team is so high now that you have to have an access to new capital. So that's why they're doing this. But yeah, as a Niner fan, it really sucks that you go from Eddie to Denise, and it's a steep drop.
If the 49ers are interested in recalibrating their entire team and cash flow, I know part of there to me there's two takeaways. One is something and someone said Lombardi is Purdy's agent, and I'm sure the narrative he would spin, and I'm not necessarily saying it's incorrect, is they're going to pay Brock Purdy and their new goal is kind of to build around him. But you could also have the takeaway with John Lynch saying there's no guarantees. Tim Kawakami just put out a report about 2 hours ago saying who knows when it comes to paying Brock Purdy if his side comes in way higher, that the 49ers are not going to meet him there, which is, to me is a big tonal switch
It is.
from just a couple weeks ago when there was basically no doubt that they were going to pay Brock Purdy, when it came from what Jed York was saying, what Kyle and John Lynch were saying, even when Brock Purdy was asked about it in his post game, press conference to end the year. uh, it seemingly felt like from all sides it was guaranteed there was going to be a deal done with Purdy. Is there a possibility that maybe they're completely rebuilding and they are more open to moving off from Purdy than we initially thought? Or at least maybe not moving off, but
Mm.
making him play out on this year and not it doesn't I mean, they're moving off of these guys that they have in these big contracts. Feels like maybe they're open to having this year play out, and then if they have to rebuild after, rebuilding after. Because they don't, it doesn't
Yeah.
feel like they're going all in to make sure that Purdy has an excellent year or that Kyle has an excellent year this year.
Yeah. Well, that's the optimist in you hoping that they do that. So, from the Yorks perspective, you're connecting the money and the field. I don't think the Yorks are connecting them. I just think that they're deciding across the board, we've spent way too much money and we're going to spend less now.
Yeah.
It's an austerity move for a year.
Everything is all about themselves and the
Yeah,
cash.
it's only about the money. It's not about the field. So I don't think they've changed anything financially or philosophically. And therefore, I think that in the end, it's going to come down to the Yorks want their face of the franchise. They want that to be Brock, and they'll sign him. So in the end, in a push pull tug of war, they'll end up giving Brock more than perhaps they want. But because Stafford's money will come in as a data point, that can help them frame the discussions of saying that it needs to be within this range. And so even if they pay the high end of that range, I think the Yorks will still be willing to do that. And Brock's agent will try to get outside of that range, and I don't think he'll succeed. The Yorks will say, look, we're willing to pay you, and we'll pay you more than Stafford, and we want Brock to be the central figure in this team going forward, but we are not spending $60 million on Brock.